Jakarta, Indonesia. Okay, good afternoon, everybody, honor speakers, and all participants of this discussion. I am Ningsi Wiko, will be moderating our discussion today. Okay, let us begin by expressing our gratitude to Almighty God for His blessings, which enable us to gather here today for the in-depth discussion on COP29, Youth for Climate Action, analyzing the outcomes of COP29. Okay, the Conference of Parties COP29 represents a significant milestone in the global effort to combat climate change. And today's discussion aims to delve deeper into the agreements reached during COP29, the implications and how every movement, especially youth movement, can play an active role in their implementation. Okay, we have organized today's agenda into three main sessions. First, welcoming speech, and then keynote speech, and the last panel discussion. Okay, before we proceed, allow me to share some technical announcement. First, kindly ensure that all devices are set to silent mode to avoid interruptions during this discussion. And there will be two Q&A sessions following the keynote speech and panel discussion. So please, to all participants, to feel free to prepare your question in advance. Okay, everybody, without further ado, let us begin our discussion with a welcoming speech by Ms. Berta Samponu as the coordinator of Asia Pacific IMCS Pax Romana, who will deliver the opening remarks and set the tone for today's discussion. Ms. Berta, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Our speakers, then youth panels, friends, the youth leaders, members of the IMCS movements, the partners and fellow climate advocates. So it's my honor on behalf of the International Movement of Catholic Students, IMCS Pax Romana Asia Pacific, to welcome all of you today for this youth-led webinar, Youth for Climate Actions, Analyzing the Outcomes of COP29. Together, we gather as dreamers, believers, and change makers for our planet's future. As mentioned by our moderator, so the 29th Conference of the Parties, COP29, stands as a decisive moment in the ongoing battle against the climate crisis. The agreements, commitments, and pathways developed during this conference this year reflect both the achievements and the persistent gaps in global climate action. And as we reflect on these outcomes together with our speakers and panelists today, we must ask ourselves as a youth who present here as participants, what does this mean for us, the youth, and what role can we play in ensuring these agreements move from paper to practice? COP29 may have reaffirmed global commitments to climate mitigation, adaptation, and finance, but it is the youth who brings the commitments to life. We are not more spectators to decisions made in the high-level forums, but we are architects of hope, I can say that, bearers of solutions, and the energy that drives accountability and action. We do not lack ideas, passion, or courage. We only need platforms. We need partnerships and political will. And so this webinar is one such platform for all of us as a chance for us to learn, to discuss and to strategize collectively. This webinar must not more than a space for reflections. It must be a springboard for action. Again, as we close this decade, we stand at a crossroads. The decision we make now will determine the world we leave behind. And while the climate crisis can feel overwhelming, I want you to hold on to this truth, that the power to change the world lies within each of us. And let us continue to dream big and act boldly. Let us listen to one another, especially to our fellows who presents as climate, as the environment activists, as the youth activists, advocates for climate action today, and uplift one another and stand together as a global community of youth fighting for justice, equity, and sustainability. In the words of Laudato Si, the Pope Francis encyclical reminds us, human beings, while capable of the worst, are also capable of rising above themselves, choosing again what is good and making a new start. So this is our moment to choose what is good and for our planet, for our people, and for future generation. Again, thank you for joining, and on behalf of IMCS Paksamana Asia Pacific and all of our co-organizers, the organizations in the regions and national level, I thank you for your dedication and commitment. Together, let us ensure that the outcomes of COP29 lead to real, lasting change. May our voices rise and may our actions inspire. Again, thank you very much. And I hope we can have a very insightful and inspire discussions today among the speakers, the keynote speakers, and then later together with the youth panelists. Thank you. I over to Ningsi.
Okay, thank you, Miss Berta, such an inspirational speech, especially for the youth. Okay, everybody, let's move to the keynote speech. Our keynote speakers today are Mrs. Wanun Pernpibul and Mr. Anselmo Lee. First of all, I would like to give a chance to Mrs. Wanun. Hello, Mrs. Wanun, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Oh, okay, thank you. Before we begin, let me give a short brief introduction about our greatest speaker today. Mrs. Wanun is coming from Thailand. She is the Executive Director, Climate Watch Thailand, and working in collaboration with women, farmers, fisher folk, indigenous peoples, and workers to challenge the systemic and demand climate justice. Okay, Miss Wanu, you're gonna deliver your materials in 7 minutes. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not so sure how am I going to put in the keynote speech, but is it okay to put in the slide presentation as well?
Okay, it's okay.
If I could also share the slides, that would also be great. Is it seen okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And it's really, really my great pleasure to be here. Our work is not really engaging a lot of youth in the recent year, but we are starting just only this year early on to engage with the youth because we see the hope lines with the youth and the new generation. And as the previous speaker has already put, I'm not sure whether we could put a lot of hope into the outcome of COP29, but the fight is still going on and we still need to fight. My work is on climate justice. So we have joined the global movement as well on the demand for the global movement on demand for climate justice. And what I'm going to share in terms of the outcome of the COP and perspectives is also from Thailand perspective and from the regional and global perspectives as well. We have put in the title as COP29, Equity Deferred and Justice Denied. And then I'm going to walk through why we are putting it like that. Things that I'd like to put as something to share later on during the next 2 hours is looking from the climate justice perspectives. And since COP29 was branded as Finance COP, so we are really, really looking for the finance. And that finance is for mitigation, adaptation, just transition, and loss and damage, and to build capacities of the peoples in the global south. So that means all developing countries. And then I'm going to go next to the key issues and the outcome, and then to give you some of the picture of how CSOs, including youth and different constituencies, have been engaging in the COP process, especially in COP29, and then also in looking ahead for COP30. So as we go along, it's really quite a historic moment in COP29, where CSOs, especially the climate activists, have seen it as the big failure once again, where the developed countries failed to deliver the historical responsibility. And this was reflected in the small scale of the climate finance being agreed in COP. The process was not really transparent at the very last minute of the decision making time. So it was the COP president was really rushed into making and adopting the decision without considering the objection of the developing countries. So that is really, really against the rules of the UNCCC as well. So that was really, really a very sad and disappointing process. And then before we go on to different key outcome, I'd like to draw your attention into what climate justice and climate finance mean. So there are two ways to look at the climate finance. So there are one way to look at it is within the UNCCC process, and the other one is outside the UNCCC process. When we are talking about UNCCC process, it's already agreed in the UNCCC that the developed countries having an obligation to provide the climate finance to developing countries. This is under the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and equity. And that climate finance will have to cover the costs of mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage. And the nature of that climate finance, it has to be new, additional, adequate, and predictable. So that is already said in the UNCCC, and countries over 190 countries agree and signed and ratified onto it. What about the finance outside the UNCCC? That finance under the UNCCC means all kinds of climate programs and actions, regardless of sources of the finance, recipients of the finance, and modalities. So this means it can be loans, it can be equity, it can be guarantee. But when we are considering about the climate finance, which is within the UNCCC, only the climate finance under the UNCCC should be counted because it respects and also recognize the CBDR, which is the common but differentiated responsibilities. And let's look at some of the finance under the outside the UNCCC. So the finance outside the UNCCC is called bilateral funding. So the German government, for example, is coming to our countries, to Malaysia, to Bangladesh, to Thailand, to Nepal. So those are bilateral between the government. So they could also provide the finance for climate actions that is outside the UNCCC. The multilateral development banks like ADB, World Bank, African banks, or the Bank of Asia, AIIB, those are with loans. They could also fund and give loans to climate projects, and those are also outside the UNCCC finance track. And then we have the finance from the market. So that means the trading of the carbon offsets or the carbon credits. That is also source of the finance, but those are outside the UNCCC. So the flow of the finance are coming from those who are providing the finance to our countries, and our countries and our governments would also be allocating those finance into to meet the needs of the people in the global south. So when we are looking at the finance or the funds under the UNCCC, this is where the justice is. So we can hold these funds and also the developed countries parties accountable because they have to meet their finance delivery under their financial obligations, because it's their obligations to give us, the global south, the finance. So we are looking at the Green Climate Fund on the left column. So that Green Climate Fund is the biggest fund in the world in working and also in providing the fund for climate actions. And then we are having just recently the loss and damage fund, which the fund would also be coming from different sources yet to be identified. It's just started. So when we are looking at the Green Climate Fund, the fund has to come from the developed countries. But as of the moment, they are having not a lot of money because it has already spent for different projects in the developing countries. But now they are trying to get more pledges from the developed countries. And the sources of the fund is from the variety sources. It could also from the private sector as well. And let's look at something that is very close to our countries in the global south and in Asia Pacific. When you are looking at the finance for adaptation, we have also seen that the finance gap has been huge. The red one, the red column, the red graph is also the needs for the adaptation in the global south, all countries in the global south. It has been so huge, but the money that has been delivered to our country is just only the green one. So then you see that the gap has been so huge. And if you're looking at the pie chart on my left, on my right, so the fund that has been delivered to our country, over 70%, 70%, are in the form of loans. Is that just? That's the question that we need to ask. So it's the loan coming from different sources. And that means our countries would have to use the public money to pay for those loans. So that is not just. So they now see the picture in terms of communities in our countries are not the one causing the climate impact, but they are the one who have to pay by themselves, and our country have to pay for ourselves in order to adapt to the impacts of climate change. So that's how the political frame has been there. And when we are looking at the finance delivered or the finance being spent by those developed or global north countries who are causing the climate impacts to our countries and our communities, it's not that they don't have the finance, but the finance they are putting in still the fossil fuels. So you can still see that they are putting the finance and the investments on the fossil fuels, which is the cost of climate impacts, rather than shifting the finance to the climate actions. So we are still looking at it, and that is really the challenge. And that has already been for several years, where the civil societies have been pushing so hard to demand the climate reparation from the global north. There's a question before COP29. Where is the finance for 1.5? So the finance has been put in the wrong place in fossil fuels. You have seen the 200 billion already put on fossil fuels for the last 20 years, and it's still going on and still increasing. But the finance for adaptation is so little, and the promise of deliver of 100 billion USD per year up until 2025 next year has never been met. So it's not that they don't have the money, but they don't want to give it and commit it to the climate finance. So that means the responsibility and especially the historical responsibility of the global north was really failed. So now with that picture, then we see that That's why it really was a big hope for the civil societies and the parties and also our governments in the global south. I really, really hope for the big scale of the finance. And that's why this COP was branded as the climate, as the finance COP. So when we see the outcome, it's really, really a drop in the ocean. 100 billion USD, which was the old goal of the climate finance, has never been delivered. But now they're talking about the new goal. Developing countries under the G77 demanded 1.3 trillion a year for the climate finance under the new goal. The CSOs, majority of the CSOs, especially the environmental CSOs, demanded 5 trillion USD a year. And then what we have got is only 300 billion annually up until 2035. And now you see that the gap was so huge to the demand of the global south in order to look and to do their climate actions. So that is only a drop in the ocean. And then it's opening up the roles and the rooms and the opportunity for the multilateral development banks to engage in mobilizing the climate finance. And this is really a dangerous and also a very problematic one because when MDBs are providing loans, they have set their requirements where the money should be spent on. And then our people would need to pay back for the loan. So rather than ensuring that the climate finance is grant-based, not just creating and engaging with MDBs to provide the climate finance. So now you see that it is not really just in terms of the climate finance. Let's look at another issue and the outcome adaptation. Our countries in the global south are not the one causing climate impacts, but we are paying the high cost of the climate adaptation. Our country and our people have to survive. They are doing everything they can despite they're not causing the climate impacts. So the adaptation money has already coming from our own countries. So what they are discussing at COP is adaptation finance. The promise was 2 years ago that they are going to double the adaptation finance by 2025, but there was no clear mechanism and roadmap how to achieve this doubling of the climate adaptation finance. It was the plan to mobilize a double of adaptation finance was rejected by the developed countries. And then transformational adaptation, the long-term framework like Baku adaptation roadmap was rejected by the developed countries because they want to talk about substance rather than talking about means of implementation. So developed countries are trying to escape everywhere they can in order not to talk about the finance. Mitigation and the global stocktake. This is really important in terms of how the world would keep temperature increase and limit the keep temperature increase to 1.5. So they're talking about this under the UAE dialogue, where developing countries really want to talk about the means of implementation. The means of implementations are finance and technology, and especially the finance. How are developing countries and countries in the global south are going to finance mitigation or renewable energy projects and do and address the loss and damage and build capacities of all the peoples in our countries to adapt to impacts of climate change if we don't have the finance. So in order to do all those climate actions, we need to have the finance. So that is not really something that developed countries would also like to see. So, and then while we are not seeing a lot of progress on the mitigation, we have seen a lot of discussions and some of the agreements reflect that they're opening up the room for harmful technologies like geoengineering, especially the carbon capture and storage that would also be supported. So that means the fossil fuel companies and corporations can still continue polluting and continue using fossil fuels by using the different technologies that are still harmful to the environment and to the climate. And then Article 6 This is about carbon markets. On the very first day of the COP negotiation, Article 6.4, which is opening up and confirmed and operationalization of the carbon markets, were approved. So that means the COP president was really want to make sure that the COP29 delivered something. And that means a very false solution. And that shows the moral bankruptcy of the climate finance and the climate negotiations since the very beginning of the COP. Carbon market means that developed countries would get away from reducing their own domestic emissions, but using money to buy offsets from developing countries. So that also means that they are paying the developing countries to reduce emissions, and then they're using that offsets as if they are reducing their own emissions. So that is not the finance that we are looking for. We really want to ensure that developed countries are reducing their own emission within their countries rather than paying off their debt and their climate sins. And then when we are looking at the just transition, what we mean by just transition is phasing out of fossil fuels. What about the workers who are working in the fossil fuel business and corporations? So those would have to be compensated. Those would have to be some programs to respond to the workers' needs as well. So we really need to look at not just only changing or stopping the use of fossil fuels and turn to renewable sources of energy. There are socio-economic and also livelihoods impacts as well, especially among the workers. So this COP, the developed countries didn't want to talk about the socio-economic impacts of the just transition. They just want to focus on the ambitions and reduction of the emissions from the developing countries, which is still not fair because it's not our burden to continue to use the renewable sources of energy without any finance support from the developed countries. Another two things and outcome that has come out, which is still not reflecting the climate justice, is on the food and agriculture. The outcome on food and agriculture has shown so clear that the climate action is really protecting the profits of the corporations over the profits and the livelihoods of the communities on the ground. There has already a lot of discussions and also agreements on continuing using false solutions. And those false solutions being there under the food and agriculture are, for example, climate smart agriculture, nature-based solutions, regenerative farming. And these are the technologies and also practices that would continue and make profit to the corporations because it would also tie all the products to the market and also to the practices and technologies provided by big corporations rather than looking and supporting community-led climate solutions, especially agroecology already practiced by small-scale farmers. And gender. So there's so many talks about gender integration, intersectional approaches, but those are already on the paper. There's no mechanism to ensure in the outcome of the COP that the finance would also be considering gender responsive, and even in terms of the false solutions, we have also seen that gender and women and those with different identities would also be impacted by the false solutions, and that would also be widening the inequality gaps. And different groups of civil societies join, join in different constituencies. And those constituencies, including youth constituencies, trying to engage in the COP process to ensure climate justice and also responsibility by the global north. There have also been so many mobilization and advocacy in order to highlight the systemic barriers and to demand trillions, not billion, out of this COP. Despite the fact that there are a lot of restrictions within COP29, and also a lot of rules for the civil societies of different constituencies in order to mobilize and to do some actions. It was really a failure of this COP as well, not to recognize the voices of different constituencies who have brought with them the voices from the ground to be heard at the COP. So in general, with this conclusion, we have concluded that it's another broken promise in this COP, and the climate justice was not reflected at all. There was a lot of dilution of the common but differentiated responsibilities, and also it was the global north has been pushing so hard in order to engage the global south countries to do more on the mitigation without talking about the climate finance, despite the fact that it their obligations to provide grant-based finance to the developing countries. So how are we going to prepare to look for COP in Belém, Brazil? Branded as the IP or Indigenous Peoples COP in Brazil. So it was branded that it would engage different groups in an opening up space, and also with the democratization process. And also what we could also see from this COP that the just transition work program and mobilizing the climate finance would also be the focus among other issues. And to us, the old generation, we are seeing that by engaging the youth, it would also be great to talk about the climate justice issues. That means unpacking the justice and injustice issue of the climate actions. And that would also need to demand the justice from the global north. And it's not just only changing the fossil fuels into renewables, but we need to ask and demand that who's causing the climate impacts needs to pay, and that is under the climate reparations. And I think it's good to prepare earlier on in terms of the COP next year in Belém. So, and by preparation of the COP next year, it would also be engaging with different groups within the country and trying to do some advocacies at the national level and also at the regional levels before going into COP. Because when governments are there in COP, they would be so busy. Even among CSOs, we are also very busy. So there would be little time to do advocacy with our national government. So that would have to do within the country before going to the COP. So with that, I end, and I'd like to stress as well that we are putting more hope to the new generation and the youth and different groups with the younger generation. And we really want to continue in the sense that the justice line with the historical emissions, and also that would require historical responsibilities of the global north. The way that the global south can do and to take the climate actions would depend mainly on the finance from the global north. It's not that we are not doing anything. We are already doing a lot, but it would need more finance from the global north, and that is under the climate reparation. With that, I end my presentation and my speech. Thank you very much. Happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Wanus. Such an incredible presentation. You presented about climate finance and about the maybe about the international political issues behind this. And I think this is the interesting topics to dive to get more deeper understanding about this, and maybe we can dive deeper understanding in the Q&A session. But everybody, let's move to our second greatest speaker this evening. Welcoming to Mr. Anselmo Lee. He is a part of Pax Christi Korea coordinator and Asia Civil Society Partnership for SDGs. And he's also member of a steering committee of international youth training. But unfortunately, Mr. Lee cannot with us in this evening. So let's hear.
Good Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm very happy to be invited to make a presentation about climate and Catholic Church and youth in Asia at this very important symposium. But unfortunately, I cannot join online real time because, as you know, we have a political crisis in South Korea. I need to join the rally to support the people's action. As you know, there will be a second vote about impeachment of the Korean president. A lot of the members of Pax Christi Korea and Pax Romana members, now they are in the street in front. Good morning. As you know, there will be a second vote about impeachment of the Korean president. A lot of the members of Pax Christi Korea and Pax Romana members, now they are in the street in front of National Assembly. So I'm going to make a recording for today's presentation. So I ask for your kind understanding. So I'm the member of IYTC steering committee, at the same time the co-chair of the Pax Christi Korea, and also I should be a member of IMCS Asia Pacific team and also ICMICA international team. So good morning. The presentation is composed of what are the root causes of climate crisis, because we need to understand why. Then we can do the appropriate diagnosis and also effective action. So I want to start with the root causes of climate crisis. And then we need to look at what are the Catholic social teachings about climate, and also what has been the church's involvement and commitment to the climate, particularly the church message about conference of parties to UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And also I want to introduce some the Catholic climate action movements, and also the international actions on climate. And finally, I want to introduce the Pope's message about the World Youth Day, the 1st of January 2025, which includes the action on climate. And lastly, I want to introduce a Pax Jubilee campaign and 2025-2027. Hopefully, discussion and speakers, you can also add more the key ask or key demand in the Pax Jubilee campaign. Okay, first part, multiple causes of the climate crisis. As you know, the climate crisis is not merely an environmental issue. It is deeply rooted in multiple structural causes that intersect across economic, political, social, cultural, spiritual, and civilizational dimension. That's why we need to have this multiple approach in order to tackle the root causes of climate crisis. So these structural factors reinforce one another, creating a complex web of challenges that humanity or civil society or youth must address holistically to mitigate the climate crisis. Here in this table, you will see the economic, political, institutional, and social communication and cultural, ethical, spiritual, and religious, and also civilizational. So I don't know whether you heard of this Anthropocene. You know, Anthropocene is a way to approach this climate. It's a more civilizational the perspective. The now Catholic social teaching on climate. The church has issued a lot of the documents and statements about the climate. So this Catholic social teaching provides strong foundation for addressing climate change and advocating for ecological justice. So these principles include number one, care for creation, number two, human dignity and common good, number three, solidarity, number four, subsidiarity, and number five, justice and peace. So these five principles are guiding principles for reflection and analysis action, which make different from the secular approach on climate. That's why it's important for Catholic, the groups when we engage the climate, always we have to remember these are 5 principles. And concretely, the Pope Francis has been the vocal advocate on climate action, emphasized the moral, ethical dimensions of the crisis. So church teaching, of course, we talk about the politics and economics, but always our foundation is a moral, ethical, which is expression of our spirituality and also our faith. So for instance, 2015, the Laudato Si, the encyclical, the full name is Laudato Si on care for our common home. This encyclical urges ecological conversion, highlighting the link between environmental degradation, poverty, and equality, and call for bold cultural revolution to transform economies and lifestyle. So this is a basic approach of the Catholic Church. So key themes, always Catholic, the social teaching are focusing on 3: ecological sin, and also integral ecology, and urgency and hope. I think it's important to remember these 3 components: the ecological scene, integral ecology, and urgency and hope. And all since 2015 are based in line with the Laudato Si key messages and principles, has been engaging the COP Conference of Parties to UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. For instance, 2015, it was in Paris, where the Paris Climate Agreement was adopted. The Church urged, Pope strongly urged the leaders, political leaders, to adopt ambitious and legally binding agreement, and will stress that climate action is a moral imperative to protect future generations. And then 2021, COP26 in Glasgow in UK called for radical decision to address the climate emergency, and also highlighted the importance of climate finance for developing nations. So all the important COP, the Pope tried to intervene with the key messages depending on the context and also the issues. For this year, 2024, Pope also issued a message urging nations to strengthen their commitment to limit global warming to 1.5 Celsius, and emphasize climate finance, loss and damage, and solidarity with the vulnerable nations. So next year, COP30 will be in Brazil, and celebrating 30th anniversary, the COP milestone, the Catholic Church Pope message will likely advocate for stronger integration of faith-based organization in global climate governance, and also the focus on enhancing adaptation measures and achieving concrete results from previous agreement. So, as you know, these are 2 foundational documents of the Catholic social teaching about climate. There is a Laudato Si 2015, and also 2023 Laudato Deum, which was published just before the COP 2018 Arab Emirates. So as we see, there are in these documents, as we see the Laudato Deum, these are kind of updates after 8 years since 2015, the publication of Laudato Si. And he said very clearly, we have not reacted strongly enough to climate crisis. So although the many the political leaders, including UN, international organization, Catholic Church, we have tried, but was not strong enough. There was a diagnosis of by the Pope about climate action, and also the world that welcome us is crumbling, and also we see how the impact of climate change will harm the lives and families of the many people. So this is the key content of Laudato Deum, and also there's a signs of climate change. He elaborates, and also he explained, the journey we have taken together up to now, and he asked for, he analyzed also why climate is deteriorating, and also why our action was not effective enough. So there was a key message of Laudato Deum. And then, as you know, we have church. There are many the the youth actions, both secular and the Catholic Church. Let me introduce some. As you know, the Fridays for Future, and then climate strike every Friday, and also traditionally Justice and Peace and Integrity of Creation JPRC movement, and also Paksomana IMCS. We have a group, as far as I understand, the youth group and student group on ecology, and also Laudato Si movement, which was created 2015 after the publication of Laudato Si. So these are the some of the youth and Catholic action movement. See in this photo, the climate action, you will see the Laudato Si movement slogan and logo. And also there is a specific Laudato Si goals, the 7 goals. Number 1, response to cry of the earth, response to the cry of the poor, ecological economics, and adoption of simple lifestyles, ecological education, ecological spirituality, and community engagement and participatory action. So these are the 7 goals. So also it can be understood as a guideline for the youth action. And now let me introduce Catholic Church action on climate. What has been doing the Catholic Church? As you know, the control tower in the Holy See, the Vatican is dicastery for promoting integral human development. So the climate action is a part of integral human development. I think it's very important to understand, So they are facilitating, coordinating Catholic Church action on climate. And the Laudato Si movement, they created the Laudato Si action platform. So many groups are joining according to Laudato Si as a part of this action platform. And also annually we have 2 occasions for action on climate. Number 1 is a Laudato Si week, 8 days, because Laudato Si was published 24th of May. So every year, that week, 8 days, from Sunday to Sunday, so we have a lot of actions in the name of Laudato Si week. And also September, 1st of September to 4th of October is a season of creation. So they have 2 occasions. This season of creation also slightly more than 1 month. So October 4 is the day of the St. Francis, feast of the St. Francis. And September 1 is the church day of the creation. So you can use these 2 occasions to organize a youth campaign within your own university and the parish and local communities. And also internationally, in the main UN, there are 2 important dates. One is Earth Day, April 22nd, and also World Environment Day, and June 5. So this is another occasion where you can engage with the civil society and the non-Catholic groups, because this is a global event. And I'm sure there are many events around your communities in your country. So now let me introduce the Pax Jubilee campaign 2025 and 2007. This has been adopted, this campaign by the Pax Romana, IMCS, but now we are discussing more concrete the strategies and action plans in January in Chiang Mai. So this 2025, as you know, this is a year of Jubilee. You can see the logo. And 2027 is the day of the World Youth Day, Seoul 2027. So this 3-year idea is we can organize a campaign in this 3-year journey. And then very interestingly, this year, World Peace Day, World Day of Peace, the 1st of January, Pope always issued the message. So the 1st of January, we begin the year with the peace, and then already the last week the Pope's message was released. So this Pax Jubilee campaign will begin with the action on World Day of Peace, and then this Jubilee year, throughout the year 2025, there are many activities. There are 2 important occasions for youth, because Pax Romana belong to these youth categories. The first one is Jubilee of ecclesiastical movements, associations, and new communities. the 7th to 8th of June in Rome. And also there's a Jubilee of Youth, July 28 to August 3, so 1 week. So these are the two specific occasions where the students and youth can join. So this is important information. And also World Youth Day. I don't know how many of you have participated in World Youth Day. So 2000 last World Youth Day was 2023, last year in Lisbon, Portugal, and the next one will be 2027 in Seoul, South Korea. The theme has been announced. The Take Courage, I have overcome the world. It's from the Gospel John. So this will be the second World Youth Day in Asia. As you see in the map, the first one is 1995 in Manila, and also 2008 it was Sydney, and Australia. And then, so it's the second time in Asia, and so this will be another important occasion for world youth get together to celebrate our faith and also our commitment to justice and peace and also care for creation. So we want to use these occasions, Jubilee, especially World Day of Peace, and also the World Youth Day. So as I mentioned, there are three key proposals by Pope Francis in his message for World Day of Peace. The one is economic justice, second, human dignity, and third, peace, disarmament of peace. More concretely, he proposed concrete action. Number one is cancel the international debt, and also number two, eliminate death penalty. Number three, reduce military spending. So our Jubilee campaign for 3 years begins with this city campaign, and also we want to add more, So I want to propose, maybe you can discuss and also propose more so that in January we'll adopt concrete key demand for our 3-year action. So this is my proposal for your reflection and discussion. So thank you for listening. I hope you can have a good, fruitful discussion. Once again, apologies for not being able to participate in interactive Q&A and or discussion. Thank you. All the best.
Okay, thank you to our greatest keynote speakers today. And now we will now open the floor for Q&A session. If the participant have any question, please use the raise hand feature or type your question in the chat box. But while we are waiting the question of the participants here, I have a question to Ms. Manon already explained to us about the climate finance and how this is COP29 discuss about climate finance, but in other hand, climate finance also give burden to the developing or underdeveloped countries. So based on your personal opinion, can we maybe this is just maybe a wild argument when I say that this COP29 is just developed countries campaign just to their national political interest of developed countries, or what's your opinion about that, and what's the main strategies to support especially the developing countries and the underdeveloping countries in achieving their climate targets, especially when we are talking about Southeast Asia countries or Asia as a general. There are so many issues, actually, not only climate change issue. There are so many issues: poverty issue, health issue, unemployed issue, and how what is the best strategic of these developing and underdeveloping countries when we are talking about climate change and we are talking about finance climate. Maybe that's the question, Ms. Wanun. Are you still with us? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's a great question. As you have already put in there, we in our developing countries, there are so many priorities.
Yeah.
Access
Yeah.
to school, access to education, access to health services, social protection, all those things under the development agenda. We are still under poverty, right? So, and also the use of energy. That's why our countries are using coal and fossil fuels because it was seen to be cheap. So for climate action, that means all the fossil fuels must be kept under the ground. That means you have to use solar cell. You have to use renewable energy. So you need finance.
Yeah.
So that means, and in order to respond to the climate impacts, which we are not causing it, right? So that means we need to get the finance for investing on the solar cells, which is still, even though it is low, but still expensive, in terms of the cost. So it is not fair for our countries to compete the use of the budget between education, health services, and the climate actions because we have already a fixed budget for all development issues, right? So for the climate actions, there is a space in the climate negotiations for our countries and our governments to demand for climate reparation. So I think the first and foremost thing is to talk to our governments, make them understand about climate justice,
Yeah.
that it is we are not causing it, and it's because of those colonialism. The rich wealthy nations, they become rich because they have extracted the resources from the global south since the prehistorical time. But now
Mhm.
still when we're talking about climate change, it seems like they said, oh, China and India and other developing countries, key major economies in the global south, you are emitting a lot. Let's talk about the time. When are these countries already happening? Not as it's not comparable to those global north who have already developed since the pre-industrial time. Yeah. So we have to make a clear line that we need to discuss and to talk about historical responsibility. So climate impacts and the cause of climate has already been there since the pre-industrial time. So it's not yesterday and it's not only 10 years ago. Your house was burned, yeah, on fire. Someone set fire on your house. And now those who set fire on your house are asking you to build a new house. Is that fair? Yeah, you have to demand from those who set fire on your house, and that is the justice. Then it's not that I'm talking only about the finance and the money. It's you need money to do a number of things. Yeah, and that is not we are. It's not that we are a beggar. This is our rights and the rights of our communities to demand the justice from the global north. So I think the strategy is which our country and our governments are normally saying that, oh, let's not point fingers to others. We have only one planet. So let's do whatever we want. But how are you gonna finance all those? You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
So on one hand, within the country, maybe you do something. Let's look at it this way, yeah. So if your government is going to build a coal-fired power plant, then there are a lot of reasons not to go for coal-fired power plant because it is already polluting the environment, the water pollution, the air pollution. Then why investing on coal-fired power plant? You know what I mean? But the way to say no to to coal-fired power plant is not about climate, yeah, but it's about other environmental pollutions and other the rights of the community to resources. But on the very last reason would also be the climate. It's not because the climate. If it is because the climate, we need to get the finance from the global north. And there is a space in the UNCCC to demand that climate reparation and to hold those global north accountable. I think our governments need to understand the justice issue of this. I hope that somehow answers. And I have already seen in the chat as well, asking like communities are doing. It would be nice as well to talk about the actions by each country. So maybe you can talk about that, and then you would see that a lot of things are already happening. It's far beyond what's already in the negotiations. So how can we bring those voices to be heard at the climate negotiations? So as of now, me participating in COP29, it's not enough voices to be heard. So there must be a link. So we need to link those voices on the ground and we cannot bring all of the people on the ground to COP, right? So that means how will we establish those kind of links to amplify those voices to be heard? At the at the negotiators. One of the way is make it heard and amplify it at the national level so that our governments are hearing the reality on the ground, the reality of the struggles, the reality of the initiatives, the reality of getting loans, the reality of the need to have direct access to finance that would also help communities to adapt to impacts of climate change. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Wan, for your such an incredible sharing. And this is kind of not the end topic when we are talking about climate change, especially in Indonesia. Actually, um, the government also try to move from the conventional fuel to the renewable energy. For example, try to build geothermal industry, but there is so many against of the root people, especially from the indigenous people, because the geothermal energy is potential on the land of the indigenous people. So there is so many issues impact when we are talking about this climate change. But this is such incredible discussion and very good topic to discuss. But we not have enough time. Let's end our first panel discussion. And before we move to the panel discussion, let's take a picture first. And I kindly remind to all our participations to open your camera, please. Okay. Everybody, please take a moment to join us for taking a pictures for documentation. Kindly ensure your camera is turned on and make sure all participants are visible on the screen. And I will give a countdown before taking a picture. Wait a moment, please. I have such a trouble issues. Okay. Wow. Berta, are you with us? Can you take a picture, screenshot? Actually, I have trouble. I don't know. So sorry. Oh my God.
Yes, has been taken. Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna count down 3, 2, 1. The first slide, please. Okay, done. Let's move to the another slide. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Okay, done. And the last slide, maybe 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you. Okay. Wait. Okay, thank you for your attention and participation so far. We will now proceed to the panel discussion, where our speakers will share their insights and experiences on today's topics. And I invite the panelists to join and begin this session. We also encourage the audience to take note of any questions you would like to ask during this discussion. Okay, everybody, here already with us, Miss Alap Mirasol Airoso. Hello, Miss Alap, are you with us?
Yes, hello, I'm here.
Okay, can I call you Alap maybe for short?
Alam is okay.
Hello?
Hello? Yes.
Okay. Okay, before we begin, I would like to introduce Miss Alap. She is from Philippines, and she is a climate justice activist and current national coordinator of youth advocates for climate action Philippines, or Friday for a Future Philippines, and she was also a representation in COP 27 and 28 in 2023. Ms. Alap, thank you for being with us in this forum. As part of the discussion, we would like to invite you to share your experience attending COP27 and COP28, and how did it feel to be part of such a significant event. And additionally, we would love to hear the key values or lessons you wish to share with the climate activists present in today's discussion. You have 10 until 15 minutes to share with us. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. I can share some photos that maybe would be interested, people here would be interested in to see. Hold on. So, hi everybody. I hope everyone's having a good evening. I am Alab, as I have been introduced. Thank you so much for that introduction. And I'm here to share a bit of my experience as someone who has attended the Conference of Parties for the past 3 years. It's been a very exciting but also very tiring experience. And I think now that I have that experience, I want to more young people to understand the implication, or like what does it mean to actually be in these large conferences, or even the conference itself. Like why is it important, or why is it happening, and why as young people we have to engage in it as well. So here I'm sharing just some photos that um of basically our analysis as youth advocates for climate action Philippines, as young people, as young climate activists, of what happened in COP29. So it's already been discussed earlier about what is the Conference of Parties, but just to give context and also to give a better understanding of what these conferences mean for us, is that there are major decisions being done in these conferences, and it is very difficult that the young people such as us, from especially from the global south, aren't as represented as we would like to be in the rooms where the negotiations happen. And even then, even if we are not inside the rooms, even when we are in our home countries, we are not being listened to even by our own governments. So it is so critical for us young people to talk about these issues that are important to us, and in order for us to push for the demands that serve the people and serve the future for future generations. So in COP29, I won't discuss so much about the results, but rather what was the other things happening inside COP29. So first and foremost, that is very problematic, is the biggest polluters is one of the most what am I most visible decision makers is the United States. And yet, we can clearly see that they do not want to engage, and even their elected president um in the United States is a climate denier. So it is very problematic that these polluters that we want to hold accountable are not present. Not only not present, but also um the people who are present instead are actually fossil fuel lobbyists. So it's these these representatives that we see in the conference of parties are people that do not represent us, and nor do they want to make decisions that is going to better our future. And that's why we talk about this kind of things, that we don't want fossil fuel lobbyists in COP29. We also don't want these decisions to be influenced by them, because obviously they have a lot of money. And what is something that would influence decisions of governments, especially governments who are looking for money, or maybe looking for ways to earn money in these spaces, is that they will work with these fossil fuel lobbyists. And another thing that is very relevant for us young people is the wars that are happening all over the world. And we are concerned for our fellow humans that are being impacted by these wars, and we don't want any more killing or dying that is happening. And yet, what do we still after 1 year, it only gets worse. And it's very problematic that these countries that are fueling these genocides, and these essentially fueling them as well with global greenhouse gas emissions, with their bombings, with their military machineries, they are not being held accountable. It is not part of the carbon emissions that is being discussed when it comes to these conferences. So all in all, we it's one of the major messages that young people in COP29 is actually bringing. And then going to the actual negotiations, we saw it was discussed earlier by Juan, and it was very wonderful, the about climate finance. So climate finance is also something very important for young people now, because this is essentially what will make our futures more real, if it's going to be implemented. But something with that we have to keep in mind with these climate finance is that it shouldn't just be about the money, but rather, if it is going to the communities, if it is going to the futures of the young people with these projects, are these projects actually going to keep us in a sustainable society? Which brings us to false solutions, because it is very possible that what the climate finance money is going to do is actually fund more false solutions. And it was one of the discussion points as well, wherein when it comes to like carbon trading, when it comes to uh, carbon offset projects, where it's like these projects that are essentially just allowing these polluters, the ones that we mentioned earlier about war, about with the United States, that they're not gonna stop polluting. They will just continue to pollute while paying for it. So that is a key message again, one of the key messages. So we have the the campaign on against war. We have our campaign um, for climate finance. We have our campaign on false solutions. So all of this, these are like the unities essentially that young people in COP, especially in these spaces, um, is fighting for. And that is why it's very clear that the outcomes that we have this year is very disappointing, because despite our demands, we did not see any movement when it comes to fossil fuel phase out. And then on the other hand as well, the space for COP itself, like it was not very democratic. There was no space for young people to actually speak up and speak out freely, because we had to follow so many rules. So in the 3 years of attending COP, this was one of the most repressive COPs that I've gone to, because we could not go outside with, well, it was very cold outside, but still it was not a good place to, we were not free essentially to express what we want to say. We were not allowed to stomp, we were not allowed to shout too loud, we were not allowed to make too much noise. We had specific spaces only to be able to share what we want to say. And all of these messages, it can only reach so much people. And that's why it's so important for us to hold our leaders accountable, not just the global leaders like the US, China, and other big polluters, but rather our own country leaders as well, because their their messages and their opinions, or what they say, essentially is what will happen to our home countries. In the Philippines, where I'm from, there's been 6 consecutive big typhoons, and what was the result, and what was the response of our local government for that? It was very lacking. So whatever promises and compromises that they did in these global conferences, it is still much more important to us that we see that the action is actually happening in our countries. So, with that, we have so many ways as young people to speak up about these issues. Like, these are issues that are close to our heart because it is impacting our families, or impacting people that we know, our friends. And what we want to do is that, or what we want to advocate for, is that we don't have to be in these conferences, we don't have to be in these rooms of decisions in order for us to talk about these, and we don't have to be there to add pressure, because in our own ways we can also add pressure to our own governments, and for them to actually make the change while they're in power, right? Like, they don't have to be in these conferences to decide that, we need help, or like people who are victims of typhoons need help. So in the end, we want to bring these messages in these spaces in order to hold the major polluters accountable. But then at the same time, we also hold our own leaders, our own country leaders accountable. We are the people enduring these climate impacts, and that is why we have more right to say these things, and we should be um, and we also have the right to talk about these issues and bring it up to higher levels, and do what methods would work for us in our own countries. So yeah, I think that was just a very quick sharing of like what campaigns young people are doing, and hopefully you guys are interested in doing more activities, and like engaging in these spaces, not just in COP, but also like even in your own country. Like, groups like such as Pax Romana is so important because we get to have these discussions together, and it's not just us reading, right? Like, it's having these conversations, which is so important when we're talking about like such big issues such as climate change. So that's all from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alap. That's very nice and lovely. You share with us your experience in COP, and there's so many issues you already share with us about wars, and so many social issues, especially and how as youth, especially women youth in this era, taking place in this issue. Yeah. Thank you for the incredible insights you share, and especially your experience, and giving a spirit actually to the youth activism here in this forum. And actually, your presentation has truly provided us with a new perspective of how you take their chance in this social issues. And now maybe we're gonna dive deeper about your experience on the Q&A session. But now I would like to invite the next speaker to continue the discussion and share her talks. And let's welcome Miss Patricia Mari. Hello, Patricia. Are you with us? Can you hear me?
Hello, I'm here. Thank you very
Oh,
much for having me.
okay, everybody. Miss Patricia is coming from Philippines, and she's assistant program secretary of the National Council of Church in the Philippines, and she's also part of the climate reference group of DACT Alliance, and also co-founder of Sangnilika, if I'm not mistaken to pronounce this, the co-founder of Sangnilika. Okay, Miss Patricia, you have about 10 until 15 minutes to share with us. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Can I just share my screen? I'm
Oh,
sorry
yeah,
I
yeah.
haven't sent my PowerPoint in advance.
Okay, feel free to share your PPT. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, yeah, so this will be coming I will be sharing my reflections coming from someone who attended COP29 for the first time. It was very shocking and overwhelming experience for me. People have warned me about it feeling like a marathon or like a sporting event or like CSOs on steroids. But I think, and people, my friends have warned me to brace myself on the decisions and the discussion that will be happening in COPs, in COP29. But I think, and I will spoil my presentation by saying this, but I think no matter how much I braced myself and how much I prepared myself mentally, nothing, no earth loving, creation loving person could ever prepare for the disappointment that would be coming out of uh of COP29. So if you are someone who's passionate about the integrity of creation, and I've seen that in many in our all of our previous speakers, it was really disappointing. So thank you for the introduction. So I am Patricia Moncal. I work in the National Council of Churches in the Philippines. It is a member of ACT Alliance. ACT means Actions by Churches Together. So I am a young woman leading the humanitarian response program of our church council, the National Council of Churches in the Philippines. We are Protestants and non-Roman Catholics. Uh, yeah, we are responding to disasters, and we are in the process of building our climate justice program, and we have been implementing grassroots disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. I've been in this field for the last 8 years. So coming out from the university, we I am fortunate to practice what I am passionate about in this field. So yeah, so here are some reflections. As a young woman, responding to disasters in the most disaster-prone country in the world and also the deadliest in Asia when it comes to environmental defenders. And I would like to um, tell my story or introduce what I do in that way so that it is already contextualized on what is happening in the Philippines. So, back to COP. Yeah. Um, I attended COP on its second week. So it's the midpoint of COP29, and there were a lot of discussions already. Our networks have been very helpful in providing information. And I joined COP as Alab mentioned. The Philippines have just experienced 6 typhoons in a span of 4 weeks. Now this is very important, an important context because I am a humanitarian responder, and this is what we do. We respond to these disasters, and I want to tell you that typhoons in this time of the year is normal because we call this the typhoon season. But having this much in a short period of time is really not normal. It is unusual. And for our communities, it looks like this. This is a farmer in the Bicol region. It is in the southern part of our island, of Luzon in the Philippines. And this is a picture of agricultural losses of crops that were destroyed few weeks shy from harvest. And coming from when you are a farmer in the Philippines, you don't own the land, but you are responsible for paying for the farm inputs, for the seeds, for the first fertilizers, for taking care of the crops, for all the for all that the costs that involves in growing these crops until to the harvest. It comes out of the pockets of our small farmers. And coming from a very severe drought earlier this year, they are already in debt, they are already in losses, and now few weeks from harvest, they have lost their crops. And they have worked for this for months and waited for this for months. So this is the heartbreak that we are facing right now. Our farmers, the one who are tilling the land, producing our food, are in hunger. So yeah, this is the context that I brought with me when the National Council of Churches in the Philippines joined COP29. And really, as an organization, we are there to learn. We are there to explore once again COP29, this space, how productive this space will be for our objectives. And we are there, of course, to support the demand of the most affected, most vulnerable, for climate reparations and real climate solutions. Uh, and these calls come from our communities, our churches, and the most affected. Second is to, yes, amplify the calls of the Filipino communities for climate justice, rights and dignity, and peace. I will get into that later. And of course, to build like a network of solidarity at the global level, who to explore that space among faith-based networks like other churches in other countries, like other council of churches or faith-based organizations. So we are there to really build that and contribute to what is already being done by the CSOs, and have and deliver there the calls of our communities and also the faith-based perspective. Yeah. And for NCCP, our banner call is that climate justice is peace. And we released this statement in time for the season of creation that our second keynote speaker mentioned. This is an important time for NCCP because the season of creation brings together Roman Catholic churches and Protestant churches um, in the spirit of synodality and ecumenism, and just to really unite on urgent issues such as the climate crisis, such as the ecological crisis. So this was the time for reflection for us, and we really find that climate justice is peace. Climate justice is peace in such a way. Peace is about having food on the table, having not worrying about your next meal. It's peace is about children being able to go to school and receive quality education, and not their education being sacrificed because of disasters, because of forced migration or militarism, or peace in such a way that people have roof over their heads. So climate justice is peace. Let us hope and act with creation. That is our message for the season of creation. And this is the message that I held on to whenever I speak to other people that I met in COP29. So being there, I joined the ACT Alliance delegation, again, Action by Churches Together. This is a global network of faith-based organizations and churches working on humanitarian development and advocacy. And one of the core programs is on climate justice. And I love this photo because this was taken in the middle of our huddles. The delegation is composed of different lobbyists from their own countries, from churches and faith-based actors. These are experts in mitigation. These are experts in disaster risk reduction. And I am one of the youth representatives here. But funny, I love these people so much, and they are very humble enough to come together and work together and really discuss and analyze what is going on in the negotiations based on our core values, which is justice, which is peace, which is integrity of creation. Very similar to what was explained earlier by our keynote speaker about Laudato Si and Laudato Deum. And I think that is something that is common among faith-based actors. So that is also what united us here. But as you can also observe, majority here are men. Majority here are also from developed countries. So I also needed some solidarity from the uh, people who also come from my context. And um, I think I found that community. Of course, here are friends from the Philippines with the People's Rising for Climate Justice. But PRCJ is also a global network that brings together the Global South voices, but also the voices from the most vulnerable and most affected countries in the most affected and most vulnerable countries in the from the global south, and also from the oppressed and exploited groups. So this community also helped me um learn about different contexts as well. So these are folks from the People's Rising for Climate Justice. Alab is also a key leader in PRCJ. And also these are some of the activities that NCCP was able to attend to. Like this is a press conference with Philippine CSOs when we talked about the climate emergency in the Philippines, the 6 powerful typhoons that had just battered our communities. And that really how climate finance was we really talked about how climate finance is urgent and really a matter of life and death in our disaster stricken communities. Here is also like a faith dialogue. We have bishops there. We have a bishop there, a pastor, and also youth from Latin America. And we talked about our faith values and how it is important in our climate action. So that also brings in our like these kinds of spaces energized me and really helped me to go back why I am there, why God has put us in that space. So it's really a good good time to come together and really how our faith impels us to call for justice for the creation. And this is also a side event with the environmental defenders from the global south. And this one, we were able to talk about the situation of environmental defenders and why peace is important in different contexts. I heard from the indigenous people, from Africa, from Latin America, from women, and from young people, and how really the constricting civic spaces also affects our climate action. So what I think Alab has delved into this wonderfully earlier about militarism and how wars affect the climate crisis. But we also added here how climate how the climate crisis is also a multiplier or is also a crisis multiplier in the context of wars and conflicts. Um, in the Philippines, as the world transitions to renewable energy, we have an influx of mining investments and mining explorations in our mountains, in our provinces. And with mining exploration, it comes with militarism, comes with private armies, it comes with government army, and that comes with human rights violations for our farmers and indigenous people that we are facing different accounts of displacement, different accounts of bombings when the communities are resisting those extractive industries. And the Philippines is a mining hotspot needed for batteries and solar panels. So as the world transitions to renewable energy, our mountains are being sacrificed. So really, how do we do that? How do we phase out fossil fuel and transition into a greener community without sacrificing human rights? And that could be done if only we could listen to the communities. So that is one of the core messages here when we say climate justice is peace. So those are the events that I participated in as the National Council of Churches in the Philippines. And uh, in the end, I come home in disappointment and profound disappointment as COP29 has failed us. And this was already discussed from the 5 trillion demand of environmentalists and CSOs and grassroots organizations. We come home with 300 billion US dollars per year by 2035. It's not even urgent. As Alab mentioned, there's exclusion, repression. I also felt that we have limited space. We could only we have limited speech. Everything is filtered in the actions inside. There's no mention, like I mentioned before, there's no mention of immediate, significant, and just transition from fossil fuels. There were even 1,000 of fossil fuel lobbyists inside. And then at the end of the text, there's an exclusion of human rights language. There's minimized gender justice articulation. And these are important as these are the experiences of our communities. This should be at the core. And this, if we listen, if we know the gendered impacts of climate crisis, if we know its impact to human rights, then we will be able to come out with differentiated solutions, local solutions. Then they will be heard. Then we would then they would be protected in the end. But we have not just stagnated, we have regressed in terms of language, in terms of inclusion of human rights and gender justice. But really, even though COP29 has failed me and I came home disappointed, I bring it with me stories of hope and stories of action. Like I've met um this young person. He is Yusuf from Balochistan. Balochistan is a nation that I haven't even heard before, but it is in conflict right now. And Yusuf is one of the young activists um in angry. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I forgot what angry means, but this is a alliance of non-governmental radical youth. Yeah, that's angry. This a youth group also calling for justice, calling for the end of militarism and wars, uh, which is important in order to achieve climate justice. And his story about the conflicts that is going on in their territory is very important and very striking as well. When we talk about imperialist polluters, and when, as Juanan mentioned, neoliberal policies, that really his message about that and his personal story about being at the center of conflict was really powerful, and how it should be resolved. So again, climate justice is peace. And also groups calling saying that no climate justice without human rights. And I find inspiration here because uh how groups come together in this message, how we are united with this message, that there are so many of us calling for human rights, that so many people who have fought for human rights and have been arrested, have been disappeared, are not forgotten by those who are calling for climate justice right now, and that is very important for us. And these are people who are carrying the voices from the grassroots. And also yeah, these are also actions from the faith-based groups from ACT Alliance. And we also call for inclusion of human rights, for gender justice, and for adequate, transparent, accessible climate finance. So these are the this is where I find hope in COP29, not in the text, not in the negotiations, but in these actions, in these speeches, in these kind of solidarity. And also, this is such a bad quality photo. And hope could also be found in the grassroots level. We could find it in the basic sectors, farmers, workers, and also the fisher folks and indigenous people who are naturally the real environmental defenders, the real stewards of creation. And they are at the forefront of the climate crisis. And seeing them resist, and seeing them build their communities and come together to talk about the issue, to talk about the solutions, to talk about demands. That's what is important to me. And also young people volunteering and going to the rural communities for to help out, to be in solidarity with the indigenous people and the most affected communities. That is all. This is where climate hope comes from. Yeah. So this is Sangnilikha. Sangnilikha is the ecumenical youth movement for ecological and climate justice in the Philippines. We have just founded this, and this was born out of youth camps in churches, Bible study groups, and seminars and talks in the pulpits, in our cell groups and church groups. These are young people coming from different churches that said it is not enough to reflect on what is happening. It is not enough to just pray about it. It is time to take action. So that is the story of Sang Nilikha. Sang Nilikha means one creation. And this is again different churches, we come together in an Episcopal church, and to celebrate the season of creation earlier this year, and we call for people, planet over profit. So these are also some actions that you can do. I support what Alab said, that you don't have to be in COPs, you don't have to be in climate conferences overseas in order to contribute to the climate justice advocacy, to the climate justice movement. The climate crisis is global, the impacts are very local, and it is happening everywhere. It is important to act from the grassroots, act locally while building connections at the global level. If nothing's happening at our communities, in the grassroots, then we don't have the pockets of resistance to connect to. We don't have the communities to connect to in different countries, in different communities, in different groups. So it's important to start where you are right now. These may be in churches, this may be in Pax Romana, these may be in your community or in schools, and we need to start there. And I think the real climate action and hope and the solutions really come from the communities, especially the most vulnerable and most affected. So I would leave with the call that in order for the youth voice to really matter, it should also echo the calls, the realities, and the hopes of the most affected, most vulnerable communities that we are in. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Patricia. You already sharing with us so many experience and full of values message, especially activists. And I really love your last message that we don't enough only to pray, but we have to take action. This is a big message to the all religious people out there, that we have to take action, concrete action on this day, because we face so many social issues, so many war in Palestine, in Sudan, in Myanmar, in our region, Southeast Asian region. This is so many agenda actually faced by youth people, and especially faced by young climate activists. And I have a straight question to you, Patricia, because our first panelist already left the forum, and you already attend COP before, and already attend so many international conference, I can say that. And actually, as a young woman, young climate woman activist, what actually strategies you can sharing to the another climate activists actually to raising their awareness of young people in this era, because maybe there is so many young people that I don't know the quantity actually, but they are not taking their action or their time to talking about the social issues, especially the climate issues. And as a young woman activist, what actually you can message you can give to them to raise their public awareness, to advocate the issues, to advocate the climate justice issues? Maybe you can give us the short message.
Yeah, I think if we call ourselves activists, then we have the responsibility of really being proactive about the issue. And the main strategy here is to go where they are. If the youth are goes to church, then we need to go there, and we need to interact with them. We need to converse with them. If they are having anxieties and mental health, then we could it all starts with the dialogue and the discussion with them, and really building that connection and really leading that connection into an action. And that is the story of Sangnilikha, our organization, our youth organization. um we we just provided the space for the young people to talk, and then we also went to the churches in their youth camps, in church camps, in their Christmas parties as well, and ask for space to talk about the climate crisis. We invite them to be volunteers in humanitarian response. And it may be true that most young people are disconnected, or maybe because they are just online, but it is also true that many of them still cares. And what is happening around the world impacts them mentally, and they care about the creation as well. And we just need to build that connection to those people and really provide space for them to express how much they care about the creation. Because probably the reason why we don't hear them, and we don't see them, is because there's no space to be with them. So yeah,
Oh,
I think it's just going there and establishing that dialogue. Thank you.
okay. Okay, and there's also a comment and question in the chat box of Mr. Pierre George. Maybe Mr. George, still with us. Maybe you can just sharing, or maybe give a straight question. Focus on our topics today. 1 until 2 minutes, please. Yours.
Yes,
Oh, okay, okay.
yes. Thank you, Ningxin. And I have a question to Patricia, which is after what she explained about being in COP and the need to connect with many groups outside of these COPs and develop grassroots-based action. Maybe she can comment on the potential she would see in being present in the space of the social forum, which is designed to be an open space of encounters between organizations that have a certain values that are explained in a document. So it's a very clear and simple concept, and maybe she can comment on what if these spaces, because there are different social forum processes, it's not unique. There is a world social forum, there is a Asia Pacific, there is an India social forum, there is a world social forum of intersection. So there is a diversity of processes, but they are based on the same idea of open space of encounters between those that think another world is possible. This is the slogan and motto of World Social Forum. So maybe as a young activist and with Christian faith, she can comment on if she sees some interest in making an organization that she has presented, a youth-led organization, Sangmilika, present in those spaces and active, developing active participation, or including coming to help facilitate, means help the forum to proceed. This is the facilitation, is that you are not the leader, you are not the, but you make things happen to keep the process of this open space of encounters continue. So it's a big, it's an invitation for her to have some kind of thinking out loud, and then let's hope there is a continuity for this.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you, Pierre. Yeah, I'll be jumping in if you don't mind. Thank you, Pierre. I take that not as a question, but as an invitation. I think at this point, any space that provides an alternative to the unjust system and the neoliberal structures that we are in that led us to this climate crisis. Any space that provides that kind of dialogue, that kind of imagination, reimagination, and action for the world that would bring us to peace, that is rooted to the needs of the communities, then that is I personally think that should be a space that churches should be involved in. So thank you very much, Pierre. And I would like uh to be more informed about the World Social Forum. I think this is very useful, and I think this is thank you. Thank you.
I I I will leave my telephone contact, and also you can fill, those that are interested can fill a form through which they can come in this Asia Pacific Social Forum. There is also a website for the World Social Forum of Intersection where you can make your organization present. So I am very happy to be in this meeting where there are so many young people, and it's also important that they come, understand, take ownership, and be active in those spaces that have been built like 20 years ago, but are still active and maybe redeveloping. There was this social forum in Nepal, and there's now next World Social Forum will be in Africa in 2026, and other processes in between, like the Asia Pacific. They plan to have an event end of next year, 2025. But beyond the event, there is this permanent idea of it. Now with the digital tools, it's possible to, like this webinar, it could be an activity inside the digital space of APSF, for instance. It would fit very well without, I mean, the same as it is organized by X and Y organization and coming and being proposed to those that are in the space.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing, Mr. Pierre. Thank you very much. And everybody, we finally arrive at our end of discussion. We would like to say thank you to all the great speakers. Thank you to the Patricia and to the all participants, and to the all speakers. Thank you for the clear and informative explanation. Your response has truly helped, especially help young climate activists in this forum to get better understanding about this topic, about the outcomes of COP29 and the general issues about climate justice. If there are no further question, and I think we can conclude today's discussion. And in conclusion, today's discussion has highlighted the significance of COP29 outcomes as a roadmap for addressing global environmental challenge. As a young people, have to play a pivotal role both in implementing the agreed policies and advocating for a broader change. And also their commitment, innovation, and collaboration are essential to achieve a more sustainable future, I think. And again, we would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our speakers, to the keynote speakers, to the panelists for sharing their valuable insights and inspiration, as well as to all participants for your enthusiasm and active engagement during this discussion. And I would like to let us continue working together, maybe to protect and restore our planet. And see you in future discussion and keep being part of the change. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And hello. Okay.